Very good morning to all. It's a pleasure to have all of you here at the beginning of a very unique and first of its kind conference. My name is Srinivasan, the convener for today's conference. On behalf of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and the Heartfulness Institute, it gives us great joy and pleasure to bring before you all this international conference titled Elevating Consciousness Through Meditation for Global Harmony. This conference provides a great platform over the next 3 days for all of you, scholars, researchers, practitioners, and speakers from India and abroad who have specifically come down today here to present your insights, exchange your learnings, and share your experiences. I would like to first invite Shri Kamlesh D, who is the Dean Faculty of the Indian Institute of Management, to formally open the conference with his words. Gopal Naik Sahab, please.
Good morning to all of you. I would like to welcome all of you to this important conference which Professor Narayan Swamy has put together with other organizations. We find that this is an important topic for learning more about it, elevating consciousness through meditation. We have a rich tradition of yoga and meditation, and probably we have not understood, at least people in general may not have understood the linkage very much. So in this context, this particular conference has an important role to play in terms of bringing the research inputs and then trying to understand the relationships and also spread the word to many others, researchers, academics, as well as all common people. So I'd like to welcome all of you. In fact, in our institute, we are basically focused on management, but as we understand, of course, as I understand, management performance also greatly dependent on the management of people. And of course, management of people, I would understand that is highly correlated with consciousness of people. So that's where I see the linkages. In fact, I also work on some developmental issues like rural development and so on. Often we ask this question whenever we are doing this field work, why people don't get together and solve their problems. So we see that getting together and solving their problem is probably one of the easiest way of doing things, but it does not happen. So when we start asking question why, probably somewhere we probably it takes away to the consciousness of people. So in that context, I see that this conference, as the opening remark has been said, it's the first of its conference, first of its kind, trying to understand the research inputs, insights from studies, to see what is that linkage between the meditation and consciousness, and of course, how consciousness helps in improving the global harmony. So in my own little, whatever I understand, it's definitely also useful to understand the management principles, management of organization, as well as addressing critical issues like the development, which is very important for countries like ours. And meditation being something very much in our culture, while we practice, or some of us practice, we may not have understood fully the significance of it, and therefore I think bringing rigorous research input to the wider audience and also help in conducting further research would be a great help in addressing many issues that our society actually faces. So it is in this context, I think this particular conference is very important, and we are very happy to host this conference on our campus. Our institute, being a management institute, we have 5 major degree programs, a PhD program, which is one of the largest in the country in the management discipline. We attract very bright students. They go through a very rigorous coursework and also do a rigorous research here. Some of you, or your the understanding from this conference might also attract our students, PhD students, to take up topics related to this and study it further. We have other 4 degree programs, which is master's program. The one MBA program is probably many of you know, which is for fresh students known all over the world. We have another MBA program for those who have work experience. We also have a third MBA program, which is for people who are actually working and can do it on a part-time basis. The 4th degree program that we have, master degree program that we have, is for the government officials who can spend a year here, try to understand the recent advances in thinking of public policy and management. So we think that for our degree programs, as well as particularly for the PhD program, this conference will be very useful, and we are very happy to host it. And I'm sure that the next 3 days of deliberations are going to be very exciting, very insightful, and which will elevate our understanding of linkage between the meditation and consciousness. So with these words, I welcome you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Naik, for your words and for the welcome and for inaugurating this conference. I would like to now invite to stage one of our conference directors, Professor Ramnath Narayan Swamy, who is the professor of the Economics and Social Sciences space area in Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Professor Ramnath has been at the forefront of conceptualizing this particular conference with members of the Heartfulness Institute. He has also, beyond his area work, been actively involved in the space of personal development and inner transformation, especially in the context of leadership and management practice in India. His work extends to the field and to the disciplines of integrating meditation, consciousness, and management practice. I would request Professor Ramnath to now please come on stage and share the purpose and objectives of this conference with all of you, and also invite and welcome Shri Kamlesh D. Patel, the Heartfulness Guide, who will deliver today's keynote address. Professor Ramnath, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you to have graced this occasion with your presence. I will try in a few minutes to summarize why we are here, what we are attempting to do, and why we are doing what we are doing. Let me begin with a beautiful quote by Swami Vivekananda. He once said, We are all privileged to be born into a religion. It's a privilege to be born into a religion. But it's a curse to die in one. It's one of his most beautiful insights, one of his most penetrating insights. The other quotation of his, which I like very much, and which I read as a young man when I was in college, was, "Education is the manifestation of the perfection already present in man." It is not easy to understand these two lines at first sight. It needs a little bit of spiritual practice. It needs a little bit of dipping into our insights. I was telling Swamiji just a few minutes ago that my first introduction to the Bhagavad Gita came at the age of 17 when I was at Ferguson College. And I read the translation that I read was Swami Chinmayananda's. And it has never left me since. The saying by Swami Vivekananda is a profound saying. We are all born into various religious traditions because we all are born in families belonging to them. There are many religious and spiritual traditions in the world, and that's one of the reasons why the world is such a beautiful place. But if you're born a Hindu, it's not a good idea to die as a Hindu. If you're born a Christian, it's not a good idea to die a Christian. What did he mean by that? What Swami Vivekananda meant by that is, when you're given birth into this world, your primary objective is to go through a period of transcendence. All our Vedas, all our Upanishads, all our Saddarshanas, all our epics, all our Puranas have only one singular message. And that message is, you must transcend everything that you receive in this universe. You must reach a stage in your journey towards inner fulfillment, towards self-revelation, towards self-realization, by gradually, through experience, assimilating the idea that you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not the intellect. You came naked, you will go naked. There is no doubt about this. But when we leave this world, we should leave with no enemies, no adversaries, and combine in us that understanding which can only be conferred by going and delving into the inside. There's a famous saying by Marcel Proust, the French writer, that the voyage of discovery does not consist in mapping new landscapes. It consists, on the contrary, of altering our ways of seeing. Both these institutions, my own and the Heartfulness Institute, we decided to come together to alter our ways of seeing. Whether we can bring into the world of management, the world that I am familiar with, the role of consciousness, the role of meditation, the role of inner development, and integrating it with current management practice. Today, in the world of management, state-of-the-art literature on leadership combines an understanding not only of analytical intelligence, which management education was very heavily influenced by in the first 100 years of its existence. After Daniel Goleman's path-breaking work on emotional intelligence, he was a professor at Harvard, we started understanding that emotional intelligence and the skills associated with emotional intelligence, which today are described as life skills by the United Nations Development Program, are equally important to managerial performance, indeed to leadership. What is management? In the close to 30 years that I have spent in this school, every minute of which I have enjoyed passionately, I am persuaded to the view that management is nothing but a creative response to a set of contradictory constraints. This world is characterized by duality, good and bad, right and wrong. Every day we battle with paradoxes, contradictions, conflicts. Management, the art, science, and craft of management, was devised as a formal study of investigation, a formal area of investigation, precisely to find how we can creatively engage paradoxes for the benefit of humankind. In the 150 odd years that management as a formal discipline has existed, it has contributed to elevate the quality of our lives. After being heavily weighted in favor of analytical intelligence, it has today given rise. There's a universal feeling among management scholars and practitioners that leadership is a function of 5 different sets of intelligence, including the analytical. But not everything in this world can be subject to analytics alone. Emotional intelligence, analytical intelligence, spiritual intelligence. And in the past 2 years, a number of scholars all over the world have contributed some very valuable insights into the area of social intelligence and cultural intelligence. Managers manage the status quo, maintain the status quo. In this country of more than 1.2 billion people, it's difficult to envisage our country being managed without managers. Leaders transform the status quo. Yet, I don't want to overstretch the distinction. There's a good manager in every leader. There's a good leader in every manager. This is one set of issues. The other, I was in London last month. I was with my Guruji, and we went to a public function where he gave a speech, and his first sentence shook me. He said, meditation is the search for reality. And suddenly I realized that my Guru was educating me about this conference. He was telling me what my address should be. In the world of management education today, we explicitly distinguish between an inner world and an outer world. The outer world is that we perceive and experience through our 5 senses. We get up every day and we engage it. Our spiritual masters from time immemorial have talked about the importance of possessing certain skills to live in this world. The value of Shraddha or concentration, the value of Viveka or discrimination between good and bad, right and wrong, desirable, undesirable. All these are contained in our scriptures. The great sage Ramakrishna was once asked, Master, how do we live in this world? And he replied, you must live like a lotus. It was such a beautiful answer, because the lotus thrives in the dirtiest of water. The more filthy the water, the more filthy the grime. It does not prevent the lotus from emanating a divine fragrance when you go near it. And when you watch it, you will realize that it doesn't allow the water to touch it. So Ramakrishna said, your one leg should be in the world. Your other leg should not be in the world. It should be in yourself. It is to understand this inner self, this inner reality, this what we call consciousness, which is actually reality, on which the material world, there is a substratum which sustains the material world. This substratum is consciousness. To dip and experience this consciousness, the most powerful vehicle known to humankind so far is meditation. So we wondered, both at the Heartfulness Institute and in our own, is there a way of bringing this subject of consciousness, this subject of inner development, this subject of self-revelation into the management global agenda? Research on leadership today, state of the art, tells us that as we grow in life, we begin life with our lower energies. But as we grow, we must learn to depend on our higher energies. At a younger age, we are interested in a good wife, a good husband, a good school, good children, a good Mercedes. We want all the good things of life. I'm not competent to tell you whether these are desirable or undesirable. It's not my job. I'm not competent to tell you that. I can't answer that. But what I can tell you is that as we grow, we need to dip into our higher energies. By the time we are in the 50s, 60s, we have more or less accomplished the material objectives of our existence. The next question is, what then? How do I then use what God has given me for my own development, to understand my own identity? Who am I in reality? One of the greatest sages of India, Sri Ramana Maharshi, was once asked this question. He was a very young age, in his early 20s. He was in Mauna, was practicing silence, when one of his devotees wrote on a piece of paper several questions. And because he was in silence, self-imposed silence, he actually wrote down the answers. It was published in a seminal work, a very thin work, which is available in Ramanashram, called Who Am I? Nanu Yaru. It's one of the most breathtaking texts that I have read and gone through. In India, our scriptures, our shastras, tell us that the purpose of life is only one. It is to realize who you really are. We call this self-realization. It's a little different from self-actualization as theorized by Abraham Maslow in a seminal work that was published several decades ago. It's slightly different. I use the word, for lack of a better word, in the East, the emphasis is within. In the West, the emphasis is without. One of the things that we have to learn desperately in this country from the West is a respect for systems and processes. In our country, everybody is king, nobody is servant. This is something we need to learn from the West. What India has to offer the world, as Swami Vivekananda said, is exclusively her spirituality. A lot of people in the West are inspired by our country, and they come here in search of inner fulfillment. And in many ways, they are more sincere, more devoted, and more committed than our own fellow men in achieving this objective. So do we have a lesson here? I'm sure we do. It is against this context of trying to wear new spectacles, to look at reality differently, to challenge ourselves, that we organized this conference. We hope, it is our sincere hope, that it will mark at least one page in the history of management thought. That somewhere in the world, two concerned institutions, committed institutions, went into this path, into uncharted domains, uncharted waters, to integrate the subject of inner fulfillment, inner development, living from the inside, onto the management agenda. That is why we thought the times are propitious to bring this on to the global stage. Indian wisdom. We need to bring Indian wisdom to bear on leadership development, leadership thinking. Our Prime Minister once said in a conference which he inaugurated in Delhi a couple of years ago, addressing the Sufis, the Sufi tradition of the world, wherever there is an injustice in our Sanatana Dharma, wherever there is an injustice, we should feel diminished. We should feel lessened. Why has this taken place? A Sanatani Dharmi, he will agonize over suffering anywhere in the world. Our vision is global. It extends to the entire human race. I was once asked, Professor, can you tell me what the purpose of life is? I'm not normally taken aback by questions, but that question took me aback. I never really thought about it. So I folded my hands and I told the questioner, who happened to be a senior manager, and I said, would you forgive me if I answer you tomorrow? I need to think about this. I've never been asked this question before. I came back to him the next morning in class, and I said, there are two purposes in life. He said, what are they? I said, your first purpose, you're born into this world to elevate conversation. If somebody comes to you and says the world is a very bad place, you should not agree with him and say, yes, the world is a very bad place. Because this is not elevating conversation. This is degrading conversation. On the contrary, your job is to tell the other person, look here, there's another way you can view the same problem. You should be positive. You should live by the principle of positive affirmation. He said, what is the second? I said, selfless service. Leaders, to be real leaders, they have to become servants. The Master, Lord Jesus, washed his disciples' feet in the Last Supper. At that time, the disciples didn't understand what the Master was doing. It took them many years to understand the gesture that the Lord had given them at that time. So, in this world, the one principle that rules this universe is the Guru principle. You want to learn the English language, you need a Guru. You want to learn mathematics, you need a Guru. And if you read the Shirdi Sai Sat Charita, the book distinguishes 8 kinds of Gurus. The Guru who teaches you mathematics is the Shiksha Guru. But the 8th Guru, the highest, the Parama Guru, the Satya Guru, the Sat Guru, is he who takes responsibility and ownership for both your material existence as well as your spiritual advancement. Spiritual masters have adorned this country's landscape from time immemorial. We, as their followers, we have not done enough to contemporize their teachings so that those teachings speak a modern idiom and are addressed to people's, not only their heads, but more importantly to their hearts. It is in this context that we decided to invite Shri Kamlesh Patel, Heartfulness Guide, 4th Master of the Sahaj Marg, a tradition, a spiritual tradition that is easily over 100 years old in India, to come and address us on how we can dip into our hearts. A guru in our tradition is defined as he who dispels the darkness of ignorance by bringing light. Light is jnana. Jnana is wisdom. That's why the sun is seen as jnana. A bit of the sun is present in each one of us in our bodies, a minuscule part, which gives us the energy to live. That is why our scriptures distinguish between Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. Ichha Shakti is the power of desire or will. Jnana Shakti is the power of speech. Your speech should be such that it should touch people's hearts. And Kriya Shakti, which is the power of action. If we are able to integrate these 3 attributes that the Almighty has given every single human being and use that to dip into the inside, there is no ocean that we cannot cross. There is no river that we cannot stream through. There is no mountain that we cannot climb. We are very, very grateful to Kamlesh D for having consented to come here, spend his valuable time with us, and address us on the subject of what is heartfulness. Have we reached a stage in management thinking where we have to move now from thinking to feeling, from the head to the heart, from the outer to the inner? I said yesterday, last evening, there was an activist who once went to Sri Ramana and said, the position of women in our society is not a pretty one. Why don't you spend your efforts in that domain? Another activist went and said, the Korean War is on. Why don't you use your powers to stop the war? Lord Krishna could have won the Mahabharata war in a few minutes, but he didn't. He allowed those days to pass, the battle to come to its end, because it was meant to teach humankind, to elevate humankind on two concepts, the concept of dharma and the concept of satyam. Simply defined, dharma means any thought, word or deed that promotes harmony in this universe is dharma. And righteousness is fidelity to truth. If we are able to live by these principles and integrate these two principles in the world of management, we fulfill both the tasks of outer advancement and inner fulfillment. Shri Kamlesh D this morning will give us an experience of meditation and combine that with an address on why that is one of the most desirable agendas in modern times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ramnath, for your inspiring words. I now request Dr. Elizabeth Denley, one of our conference directors, to please introduce Kamlesh Ji and welcome him to deliver his keynote speech.
Namaste, everyone. Good morning. It's very hard to introduce somebody who is beyond qualities and whose existence simply radiates outwards. Is there any inner and outer in such a person, in such a being? When I look at how he can contribute to this conference, it's on a completely different dimension of consciousness. Because here in front of us we will see somebody who has been and continues to be an extremely successful leader, an extremely successful manager, who has created almost a dynasty of business in the United States, in a foreign country, who's lived half of his life in the West, half of his life in the East, who spans all cultures, is beyond a culture, who started life with a craving for spirituality and a craving for worldly existence from a very early age. Before he was a teenager, he had read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, which is no mean feat for even us today. Not only read, but understood. We often think of gurus, we often think of spirituality from the past. We quote the Vedas, we quote the Bible, we quote all these ancient texts as our reference. But when you read the ancients, for example, say you read Patanjali, and you look at his very first slokas, what is he saying? He's saying that yoga is the cessation of all the modifications of the mind in the field of consciousness. It's not exercises. It's not reading texts. Yoga is creating that condition that Daaji spoke about last night of sthit pragya, of complete stillness, complete balance, complete oneness with everything in creation, the condition of absolute samadhi. How to do it? Patanjali goes on to say that at the time of meditation, one of the 3 key words in our conference title, at the time of meditation, The witness, with a capital W, the inner witness, abides in itself, resting in its own essence, its true nature. The next sloka says, at other times, when our energy is outwardly focused in our day-to-day activities, we identify with the modifications of the mind, taking on the identity of those thought patterns. So in meditation, the mind settles. We're able to see our true nature. If I think of Daaji, Daaji is somebody who personifies this. He doesn't just talk about it. When you're in his presence, you feel the sthit pragya, the stillness. And yet, he's running a huge multi-country NGO organization that teaches heartfulness meditation in over 130 countries. He guides the millions of practitioners. He guides and trains the certified trainers of heartfulness. He builds ashrams. He goes around day to day, examining the details of the structure of a meditation hall. There is no inner and outer in this world. Both are in oneness, which of course is the goal of yoga. Yoga is union, oneness. So in a sense you can say Daaji is yoga. He's also a manager, a leader, a father, a grandfather, a husband, a colleague, a friend. So many things. There are no compartmentalized aspects of a being at this higher stage. So if anything for this conference, he personifies the title, Elevating Consciousness through Meditation for Global Harmony. So with that, Daaji, I welcome you to the stage and hope that you all benefit from this wonderful presence. Thank you.
Namaste everyone. After hearing Professor, I don't know what to say further. He has covered most of the things. Importance of sthita pragya in a human being and a must for a leader. We hear so many things from our elders. We read so much that spiritual quotient, being empathetic, analytical quotient, so many quotients that are going on, being described in modern management parlor. They're great significance to it. We also talk about in yoga, state of samadhi. We extol various states also. But my main pursuit has always been how to arrive at such a state, how to arrive at the culmination of meditation, which is samadhi. And within samadhi also, there are infinite stratas. One of the stratas, I think perhaps unfortunately, the only strata people, I wouldn't say familiar, but have heard, that in samadhi you feel nothing, you become zombie, which is not so right. It is, Patanjali again says, it is pasana tulya, state like a stone, might as well become a stone. Or smoke something and stone yourself. If that was your goal, becoming thoughtless. Goal of samadhi is not becoming or arriving at thoughtless condition, but to master your mind and allowing it to work at your terms. Yesterday you saw children, right? They were asking you questions. Do you think your hands listen to you, your mind? When you hold a pen, how do you write? Does it listen to your mind? Does your leg listen to your mind when you walk? Everyone say yes. And then they put us through an exercise which proved that none of us can listen to mind. This conditioning has happened this rigidity in our nervous system and its stimulus going to our limbs have rigidified the whole signal system. Well, anyway, we'll try and understand first of all what consciousness is all about and see how we can change this consciousness. We can often talk of consciousness, evolving consciousness. Best would be let us analyze and make a dent over it, how to swiftly move from one level of consciousness to another level of consciousness at will. Not just by desiring, but at will. Well, what precedes before will is ichcha. It is okay. But what next? And then next, and then next. We'll also try to find out what is it that supports this consciousness. Do we think about such things? Once someone asked my Guruji, what is the role of Satchit Anand? He was laughing. You'll be surprised. I'll share that statement a bit later though. To me, these words are passed on from generation to generation. Satchit Anand. It's a coded message. Extremely coded. It's like a secret message, but known to all. No one understands the true meaning. You can write a book on Satchidanand, and yet you will not understand what true Anand or bliss means. What is bliss to our soul or to an Atman? What is joy to your subtle system? And what is pleasure to your physical body? They're quite different. To arrive at blissful state, look at the middle word, chit, which is consciousness. Sat, you can take it into two meanings. Either truth, take this as a truth, that it is only through this chit that you will arrive at Anandam. It's a message. How to alter this chit at will and make it more productive in our day-to-day life. But most of us remain fixated from the first breath till the last. Nothing change, nothing whatsoever would make a change, however educated you may be in the field of consciousness, because it's a different dimension. If I kick something, I may be able to move things in the physical world. I may argue, I may deliberate, I may discuss with a lot of love and change the understanding and also get enlightened by the discussion with the others. That will also not change my consciousness. Then what shall? So we'll dwell into that also. Once we know what changes consciousness, it will be easy to understand how flexible that is, how playful it can be. But I would like to showcase today, yesterday we had our children showcase their talent. This talent can be learned between the age of 5 and 15. Why not later? After 15, the creative energy that we have within becomes procreative. The hormones needed for procreation takes over, changes the brain. Neuroplasticity is lost. We become rigid. So until that age only, you are able to make this creative process manifest in your abilities to sense things, perceive things, intuit things confidently. If I give you a letter, folded letter, and ask you to read, can you read? You'll say, what the hell are you doing? You want me to read a folded letter? You must be joking. But these children can do it. I just want you to see and observe that it is, yes, it is possible to perceive things, because consciousness is all about degree of perceiving things. What happens to our consciousness when we are in samadhi? What happens to our consciousness when we are angry? What happens to our consciousness when you are disturbed? What happens to it when, unfortunately, a person enters into a state of coma? Or when you're in sleep, or in a dreamlike state? There was a time, if you recall Ramayana epic, and visit Yoga Vasistha Sanhita, the dialogue between Lord Rama and his Guru Vasistha is all about consciousness. His contemporaries, his father-in-law Janak, and the great dialogue between another giant, Rishi Astavakra, it is all about consciousness. How to arrive at the state where you remain unattached, how to arrive at liberation, state of liberation. Another recorded evidence, dialogue between Lakshman and his elder brother Ram in Vanvas, during Vanvas. They had nothing else to do but chit-chat. What can you do in a forest? So he was learning things from his brother, all about consciousness. It seemed, it was a buzzword of those days, consciousness, and how to alter consciousness, make use of it in day-to-day life. Consciousness is something which was there even before creation. It will remain whenever will not be anymore. So to give us some confidence that yes, we are adults, if children can do something at their level, we can also do something at our level in a different way. What they will showcase to us is ability to observe with other senses other than eyes, and making showcasing a solid proof that yes, there is a possibility of perceiving things in a different way. Observe, conclude through a well-developed intuition. So here, we are using sensory perception at a physical level. We are intuiting from a subtle body level. And we are concluding with a sharpened intelligence, which uses all the four Sukshma Sharir. And we will see how all these four Sukshma Sharirs plays out in our own evolution. So I will request those children to showcase their few things very quickly in 5 minutes. Are they here? Okay. So when we define consciousness as, or understand consciousness as ability to perceive things, what happens when we don't perceive things? So you can say it is degree of perception or a spectrum of perception, where there is feeling, there is perception, at the same time you don't feel as well. That also shows there is some consciousness. Consciousness is everywhere. It is said that even a stone has its own consciousness. Plants and trees have their own consciousness. Child has its own. Adult has its own. Saint and sages, they have their own consciousness of a different level. So, and the beauty is, they look similar. At the pinnacle of consciousness, And the beginning of a consciousness, which is a stone-like, it's almost same. Saints don't react. So does the stone. You can insult and get away with murder with a saint. He won't respond or react. That doesn't mean he's stone. He's doing it by choice. That's the only difference. So children, welcome. You got 5 minutes. Okay. So, it looks quite impossible. But world is multifarious affair where many things are possible even when they are not. Practice, confidence, and some level of development is required. Can any kid can do this? I say yes. We can train them between the age of 5 to 15. It only shows how developed intuitive abilities can help us come to a right conclusion. As a manager, as a leader, as an owner of a business, we need to make right decisions. Decisions of such orders that it doesn't hamper, hurt others, but it elevates others as well in the process. Whatever I'm going to make a decision as, will it be helpful not only to my industry, but also to the world and also to the people who support me? Because there can be a lot of friction at multiple levels of this machinery. We compromise so much. So we need to create such a harmonious state between all parts of this machinery so that the result can be noble, which will not go against dharma, and is, as it was narrated so well, must not go against satya also. It must uphold the truth, uphold the dharma. Lord Krishna's example is so beautiful. We become so stone-like under many situations, and we leave our affairs to God and say, God, do what you can do. See if you are so great. We are challenging God in a very negative way. We say it's a taste of God or a taste of a right guru. If he is so capable, let him change me. We have such blatant tests, but nothing can change within us unless I welcome that change. In order to welcome any change, I must remain a beggar to myself. I must beg myself. I must beg to the existence. Once you recognize that this is my weakness, pray to the existence. I need the help. Without that, nothing can happen, nothing will happen. Duryodhana could have done very simple thing. Lord Krishna, please help me. I'm not able to change my mind. The whole thing would have been so wonderful. Everything would have solved the problem. Adamancy. Adamancy creates such an ego-like state, which again affects the field of consciousness, which becomes extremely narrow. It's worth understanding this one. When you're so egoistic, even to your loved ones, your loved one also gets hurt in the process. Even on simple argument, simple discussion. Ego can change not only my personal consciousness, but can also affect the consciousness of the other person. So meditation teaches us, first of all, how to prevent it. Many people say, I am so stressed. And who is not? We all are stressed at some level or the other. Some level of stress, as they say, eustress, is a beneficial stress which is a must, which is required. going beyond certain level of stress to what they call is as distress, which is not healthy. If during the exams or where you have to do some performance like these children, if you are in a state of distress, it will not help. But some level of eustress, some level of slight lack of confidence is required, slight. So that you'll prepare yourself and don't go with a lot of confidence. Oh, I can do this. That is another form of ego, where you become extremely careless. What is this consciousness made up of? How it is played out? We talk of evolution. Evolution can happen at multiple levels. Darwinian theory says that we emerged from animal kingdom and we became human. It's a very debatable thing. As a human, where will I go as I evolve? If I have to evolve, maybe it might take millions and millions of years. If I have to swim like a dolphin or fly like an eagle, it take many years, many millions of years. But I don't have such a long life. I can only age during this lifespan that I have been given. So body cannot evolve. Body can only age. What about soul? Can soul evolve? Shastras, they say, soul is immutable. It is pure, unchanging, eternal. So what is unchanging? What is eternal? What is immutable cannot change. So it cannot evolve. Then what are we trying to evolve? Understanding shows that it is these subtle bodies, sukshma shariras, they talk about in Shastras. Chit, Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar. It is in this Chit, the other three are played out. They are known, causal body is also known as soul, also the Karan or the cause of our existence. The middle one, as you can see, CMBA. Chit, Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar, and physical body, we are familiar very well with it. We focus on this consciousness. Consciousness, like in electromagnetic field, it's also a field. In this field, which is individual, personal, but at times it touches the other fields and gets affected by the vibratory level of the other person's consciousness field. If the person whom you meet is angry and demanding, argumentative, what happens to your field of consciousness? You suddenly start becoming protective. When you hear or when you see someone in that particular state, or when you have closed your eyes, even with closed eyes, you can feel who has entered the room. The vibrations you feel, the way they storm into the room. Some people enter the room as if there is no entry from anyone. They enter so gently. It reflects the consciousness of such a person, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they enter the room, the way they touch the chair. Some people, haven't you seen in your rooms when they enter? They come, barging in, drawing the chair, making so much of noise and start as if they own the world. It reflects their level of consciousness and that is their signature. Do you want to create such vibratory level wherever you go with such a tendency, with such attitude? None of us want to. So now, having understood the significance of consciousness, how to improve it? Let's visit Swami Vivekananda again, his statement. Any spiritual practice For any spiritual practice, the one simple goal is whatever consciousness that is available to an individual, that practice must take that available consciousness and allow it to fly in the sky of superconsciousness and help him to dive deeper into a state of subconsciousness. And he compared this available consciousness that we all have, and he said it's a mere film of water which is sandwiched between two giant oceans. Can you imagine something which is 2 mm or 2 millimeter of consciousness sandwiched between Pacific and Atlantic oceans? That's what we are. That's what we are playing with. That's the only freedom we have, a mere film of consciousness with which we are playing around and we claim ourselves to be so and so. What distinguishes a person from another person is the ability to immediately go into a state of superconsciousness, perceive things, return back, and give a decision, like these children. For them, it became a play, a playful act. We can also play with our consciousness, but it requires daily practice. Because if I meditate now, I don't know how many of you were here yesterday meditating. Can you raise your hand? Okay. Less than 50%, okay. Can you recall your yesterday's after meditation state? How many can you recall? Hardly few. And fully recall? I don't mean to say recalling the experience. I would like to say, what I mean to say is that fully recalling that state and become that what you were yesterday after meditation. We lose. Subtler the state of mind, we seem to lose that. I can hold something like this forever, reasonably for hours together. And if I am challenged, I can hold it for days, and I keep taking meal with my other hand. This is something I can grab. But subtle thoughts and something even greater, subtle, sukshma, adhyatmic states, spiritual states, they are worse than holding air in your fist. They slip away once we become careless. But if we learn the technique of enhancing the state that we acquire after meditation, that can be learned, that can be practiced. Suppose we meditate today, and you do this later on. After the meditation, spend 2 minutes or 3 minutes, savor that condition, and make a will that until the next meditation, I will enhance this state further with my open eyes. Then you are beginning not from where you left yesterday, but you will be starting from a different level of, higher level of consciousness. When your goal is only to maintain the spiritual state or a condition or a consciousness, then you are bound to lose it. And even if you retain it, there is no profit in it. If your father gives you $1 million, my boy, go and invest. And after 5 years he asks, what did you do? Tell me the story. Dad, I preserved it so well, I put it in the bank at 3% interest. He'll laugh at you. Another boy, it's fully intact, it's in my locker. He'll feel so sad. Invest means it must multiply. Spiritual states also can be multiplied. It can be enhanced day after day. So this mere film can reach the pinnacle of sky one day. It depends on us whether you want to touch the stars in one day or one lifetime, or in this very moment itself, how desperate we are. My Guruji used to say, if a right person is there, you can just turn your head from here to here and you will realize God. And based on such wisdom, Gurus or the disciples were classified. One is who is like a stone, nothing happens to such a person. It rains, water flows out, nothing grows on such a stone. How would you burn wet wood, wet piece of a wood? It's easy to burn a dry piece of a wood. How difficult it is to ignite such a wet wood. And even if it burns, it will create so much of smoke around. Emotions are like that. What's his feelings? And when you have a petroleum, you have to be careful there. It's a little spark and the whole thing blows. Instantly it is finished. What is finished? This is just an example. What is finished in an individual who is seeking God, who is seeking self-realization? That he understands very well that I am nothing. I'm not even a dust at the feet of the Lord. This realization dissolves you completely. You are no more than. And that's when this Kabir Sahib statements comes to our understanding so well that at the pinnacle of our practice, the self, which is like a drop of water falling in the ocean, becomes the ocean. My small level of consciousness now, when it mingles with the universal consciousness, it becomes one with God. Let me give you an example of how this consciousness suffers, why it suffers in most of us. Why are we not able to allow the knowledge, the light coming from our Atman at a surface level, our mental level? What makes it so difficult? For that, we'll have to understand the chakra or the plexus, yogic plexus system. In our understanding, we have 16 chakras, starting with Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipur. Then we come to the heart, Atma Chakra. Then there's what they call fire point, water point, Vayu point, Akash. Then this, what they call Trikuti. And then it goes on up to crossing Sahasradal Kamal and the center. Many points which are not described in yogic literature, we experience. They have described them as milestones, but they have forgotten how much can be detailed and transferred through memory. It's very difficult. Consider these chakras as colored glasses. You keep one light or a candle and put one colored glass, then second colored glass, then the third colored glass, then the fourth colored glass, like that, 18. And by the time you put, would you see the light coming out of it? Very little. Chakra systems are there as a protection, as they say in electricity, surge protector. To the extent we develop the ability to receive these currents properly, to that extent we start becoming more and more capable of withstanding such currents of consciousness. If somehow someone is made or cognizant of the highest state, his nervous system will totally collapse. Imagine transmission is given to you in such a way that you cannot get up from the chair. What is the use of such transmission or a samadhi? That is not the goal. We have to make our consciousness cognizable, recognizable. Work with it for the betterment of humanity. In the management world, what are we managing? If you cannot manage yourself well, how are you going to manage others? So the emphasis of yoga, meditation is mastering yourself. One who masters himself becomes a master. Mastering oneself means having control over these 4 sukshma shariras, subtle bodies, manas, buddhi, ahankara, that creates and alters the field of consciousness. Now, when this consciousness evolves, what and how these sub-elements of consciousness also change. For example, manas, the mind. What becomes of the mind as it evolves? What becomes of buddhi as buddhi evolves or intellect evolves? And what becomes of ego, at the pinnacle of which it turns into what? As we meditate, how do we meditate? We meditate on the presence of the divine in the heart. Or some of you may be meditating with whatever thought in your mind. You may be repeating mantra, whatever be that mantra. Mantra is not a thought, it's a word. It's still a lower form of approach of meditation. You can repeat your name also. That can become a kind of a self-chant. You're too busy chanting. You're not perceiving changes at a consciousness level, though you might develop focus. But it is too superficial. When I say I am meditating on the presence of divine light, you can meditate for days, months together, but nothing will happen unless and until pranahuti is poured in your heart. With this pranahuti, thinking becomes dynamic. Thinking slowly moves into a different level. A simple thought that presence of godly light is present in my heart takes us to a next level, to feeling the presence of the Lord. Otherwise, you can think all your life, but you can never feel the presence. Then it will be a tragedy. So in religious world, in ritualistic world, they talk of God. God is omnipresent. Yes, it's a mere thought. It's a dogma. It's a belief. To actualize this thought, I must practice in such a way that that thought becomes an experience for me. That is spirituality. Otherwise, dogma will create only fights and friction amongst people. Dogmas belongs to the world of religion. My God, my prophet, my saints, my traditions, my rituals, my holy places, for which we all fight. Externalizing God makes us fight. When we internalize and experience that presence within us, and one day, when that fortunate day arrives, and we move to the next chakra, from the heart where we meditate, when we move to the Atma chakra, when I experience the presence of that Atman in myself as well as in others, then I feel the presence of God in all. I don't have to be taught that God is in every heart. You will experience it. And when I experience that godly presence in every single heart, where is the question of fighting then? Where is the question of putting or making yourself at a higher pedestal than others? That thing crumbles. The differences crumble when we experience that presence, not only in myself, but in others also. Yesterday, after coming back from Professor's house, we were going to our room. Two gentlemen met us. One fellow, quite a philosopher, I don't know if he's here. He said, Aham Brahmasmi is a very nice state. Yes, indeed. Feeling the presence and claiming that I have become like him, it's great. But greater would be when I feel his presence everywhere. Instead of saying, Aham Brahmasmi, all are Brahman. And I feel it so. Not by words, but I declare it so on the authority of my own experience. And third level, all are from Brahma. So this is just, by the way, what is possible through this inner journey. Pilgrimage is not visiting one tirtha after another tirtha. It's the external exercise in the external world. Isn't it said in some traditions, 100 चूहे मार के बिल्ली हज करने गई, है ना? सुना है ना? क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? Now when we move to the third chakra, which is Agni point, fire of love is ignited within us. Everyone seems to be your own. Love, unrestrained love will be lashed out. Everyone feel like they are mine, I am them. And this is how our journey begins, from simple suggestion that divine presence is in my heart, and we keep slowly moving from one chakra to another chakra to fourth chakra, and it keeps on going until there are no more changes, until I feel that I no longer am. It's only him and him and him. What in some tradition is called prapanna state. But we go beyond prapanna. Prapanna is a state where you are no more. Your ego has greatly dissolved. So that is about the first sukshma sharir, manas. The thinking changes to feeling. Now what happens to the feeling? When ego tells you that now you have become this, you are so and so of a company, and when you meditate and this thought keeps coming to you, you are such an important person. Nothing wrong with it. You are only relegating your duties in your position with your abilities. This is fine. But when I surrender the flavor of that ego to the Lord and try to meditate, I don't think you might be able to appreciate this example, but let me put it in a very negative way. You are about to meditate. You had a fight with your husband on a simple thing, why the tea was cold. And after he goes to office, now you're home alone and you want to meditate. How will your meditation be? How will your consciousness move? Will you be able to experience anything with that thought? I don't think so. You'll be meditating on that argument If you are a wiser one, you would say, okay, make your own tea. But that will create more fight. So he'll have to adapt. Oh, as soon as he goes to bathroom, I'll turn on the stove. By the time he comes out, maybe I'll pour the milk. Things like that, anyway. So you start preparing to avoid the conflicts early in the morning. Anger, state of anger will not allow you to meditate properly. It will not give you any condition. Per contra, when you move away from anger and submit, surrender to God, my Lord, let thy will be done. It is what it is. Let us meditate and then see what happens. When you surrender your ego and invite God, your quality of meditation will change. Apply these principles when you meditate. Don't trust my words. See what you... Stay with anger and meditate. Become soft-hearted, open-hearted, and surrender in some way to God and say, my Lord, let thy will be done. I don't have any preconditions about my experiences that I should experience you as so and so. No. No such conditions. That I should see you as a jumping Hanuman in my heart. Or yesterday I was citing an example of Mother Durga or Kali coming to you during meditation. If she comes alive in front of you, how many will you meditate? She is riding on a tiger. You may not be afraid of her, you'll run away from there, see. So, no expectation. And God being what that agency is, beyond forms, beyond qualities, how to experience an entity that is beyond. Now we are trying our consciousness to move in that direction, see. Our arrow is moving towards the divinity, towards spirituality. It tells us don't be angry. Now we are moving to a qualitative change in ourselves. That if I am angry, I waste my time in meditation. Per contra, when I'm open, surrendered, and accepting, my meditation changes. So now you're shifting your attention from feeling to becoming. That if when I become like this, my experiences are better. And I'm not like that, my experiences are bad. So focus is on now becoming, transformation of yourself. And how does this transformation occur? Now you have understood that this is what I have to become. When you highlight your weaknesses, example is irritability, anger, short temper, greed, so many other things, sensuality, unexpressed sensuality, say, which you are so afraid even talking to your own spouse. It troubles, it scares the hell out of people many a times that I am worshipping God, at the same time I am having these thoughts. Until they are fulfilled, I am not able to move away from that. But then when the understanding comes, these are all futile. But how will this understanding come? So there are yogic practices which we'll take up as we move on. How to get rid of sensual tendencies. Mostly such a tendency exists in most men. Women, they don't suffer so much because of sensual tendencies. They're able to make peace with it at whatever cost. So that's about manas, thinking to feeling to becoming. And a state should come where you no longer exist, which is a state of non-being, where only He exists. Lord takes precedence. From the state of prapanna, sometimes you think I'm important, sometimes you think God is important. This oscillation will happen in between transitory states. But when you finally make a firm resolution and say only He remains, Prabhutva starts in you. And only Prabhu prevails. And where there is no desire even to make a spiritual progress, let thy will be done. I am what I am. It is not a statement of a lazy person. It's a conscious, enlightened decision that, Lord, let thy will be done in a true sense. Then He really lifts you like a kangaroo and it's, little, what they call? Johnny. So you are in the protective womb of the Lord, and He carries us then you have reached home. With such consciousness, when we interact in the world, with the family, with the work environment, it is such a joy. What would you do when you catch one of your employees stealing money or diverting your merchandise? Or your colleague, your partner is stealing from you? How will you make decision? Now, imagine for a moment you are a totally sattvic person. What I would do is call that person in the office. I know what has happened. Explain your awareness about the facts. They may deny, show the proof, undeniable proof. What will happen then? Either that person will feel so terribly guilty and might disappear like Mother Sita, out of shamelessness or hurt where there is no more hope left in a spouse. Like that, you feel helpless. That person will be checkmated because now you have come to know. But tell him, I'm not fighting with you. Perhaps you did this because you wanted more money. You take it. He'll change permanently. Give him a raise. Maybe your needs are bigger than mine. You will change a person once and for all, and he'll be most loyal person in your entire enterprise. But don't spread this news and belittle him with other colleagues. You can be forgiving, that doesn't mean other person has to pay the price. This is possible when we move from chakra to chakra, and when you truly realize it's not he stealing, it's me stealing. And when this guilt takes over, see, what happened to Lord Rama also? When he could feel it no more. My darling Sita, she disappeared because of me. He took samadhi in Saryu river. We call Jal Samadhi because he was the Lord, he was the Avatar Purusha. What would you call that in modern terms? Be bold and say it. That's it. Where all hopes are lost, you feel helpless. Imagine the condition of Avatar Purusha, and we are, what are we? It is possible. We have to feel sorry, sympathize, offer prayer for such an individual who is helpless. Next subtle body is intellect. What happens to this intellect as it evolves? And how do we make use of evolved intellect in our management world? All these things were developed only for one reason: how to accelerate the process of realization of God, acquiring Brahma Vidya. But today we are applying this developed entity, subtle bodies, so that all those who love to be a good leader can also meditate and become divine citizens. If you say this is going to help me in the management world, I'm sure it will help. But it is still a very limited approach. Becoming a better human being, divine person, surely helps, but the intentions are different. Intellect, we all have, to a smaller or greater extent. Intelligence is universal. Have you seen Loki growing in your backyard? A bottle gourd. How its tentacles captures the wires. Wires don't have brains, the tentacles don't have brains. Yet its universal intelligence makes it hook itself with the wire or another branch. It doesn't need brain. How does it intuit? We don't know what will be the mechanism, but what I'm trying to say here, that intelligence is universal. It is there even in plants. So don't feel so proud that I too have intelligence. We do have well developed, but we don't use it too much. We don't hook ourselves to the right. Our tentacles are in all wrong places. We hook to wrong things. Hook yourself to a right thing and get supported. Then everything will be all right. In Hindi they say, ek sadhe, sab jai. You hook your tentacles to all multiple things, but not to a main thing, gaela. Nothing will happen. But if you remain glued and support yourself with the main thing, then all other things will be solved automatically. So people who think, they say, I have this problem and I have that problem. You try to solve all these problems one at a time, one life will not be enough. But you solve one problem in such a way that having solved that problem, all other problems can be dissolved. That is Brahma Vidya. If you ask God for peace of mind, He is generous enough. He will give you. He will grant us peace of mind. But what if He withholds Himself? So wiser would be to ask Him. If He comes, peace will also reign supreme within us. So be wise when we ask. There is a beautiful story in Mahabharata, no? Before the war began, Pandavas, represented by Arjuna, Kauravas, represented by Duryodhana, approaches Lord Krishna. On whose side are you? Will you help us? Lord Krishna offers, either I'll be fighting on one side, not even fighting, I'll be on one side, and on the other side, all my armies, all that I possess will be given. Duryodhana was happy to have all that Lord Krishna could give and grant. Arjuna was happy just to have Lord with him, though he knew Lord will not raise or take arms at any moment. He is not going to take bow and arrow for him. He will not even use his Sudarshan. But result is known, that whosoever side is Lord, that party is surely going to win. And in our life also, when we hook our tentacles with God, you will be supported forever. Intelligence, when it is hooked at the right place, it moves. We become more intuitive in nature. We become wiser in the process. How thinking fails and feelings somehow becomes supreme. You have seen day-to-day examples. Whose heart is geared towards feeling more. There is a classical difference between male and female. One is logical, another is more heartful. They perceive through feelings. So can we say the females are more advanced on an evolutionary scale, as we are arguing on that level, where thinking leads to feeling, but they're already feeling things. But when female becomes more logical, there is no stupid person than that. Because you are lowering yourself. You can argue, you can give a lot of argumentative reasons, but you have fallen from the grace of feeling things. Similarly, a wiser man, logical, okay. But if he becomes too emotional, it looks like a foolish fellow. There is a big difference between becoming emotional and feeling things. You can intellectualize things, but a wiser man will not do it. To him, things are very clear. Third part is ego. The worst part of ego is arrogance. The classical example we all share is that if you're a musician and if Professor Ramnath says, I am the best professor in the entire campus, not only in IIMB, but all across IIM. If he declares that, what would you think of him? Very little, no? If you are a musician and play a flute, everybody loves your flute. They are standing and playing, clapping all to standing ovation, for minutes together. And next day you have to give performance in another city. Would you be happy with the same performance? I don't think so. I'll have to do better than yesterday's performance, though it was great. My heart will not be happy until I surpass my music performance. But to think that there is nobody in this town better than me as a flute player, it will be arrogance. But to use this very thing and say, I can be better in my flute. I can play it out better. I have to work at it. Then I am making use of that ego in a right direction. When I move further from I to we, in management, this is very important. I cannot be solo in a team. Team means all together. There is no competition. Working together, staying together, and growing together. We all are responsible. When I say I move in the field of consciousness and become the divine citizen of the universe, it will not work. My heart must cry out, as they say, when somebody is suffering in Ethiopia. I am in India, heart will cry. Why this thing has happened? You may not extend the help because it is not practically possible. But to the extent it is possible, if you have the ability and means, do it. Otherwise, whole idea of compassion will fail flat. Gandhi's idea of non-violence versus Buddha's idea of compassion. You can compare and dissect and see how little Gandhi looked in front of Buddha. Non-violence is a great idea, no doubt, not to hurt others. But what next? You have not hurt the other person, but you have not helped either. Compassion means I feel sorry for the others. My heart goes out. My heart may melt, but my action part is still pending. I must do something about it. Otherwise, this very compassion will become a burden on my heart and create guilt. Suppose you are a doctor. You are driving on these busy streets. Old lady fell down and broke her leg. You saw someone falling down. Your help was needed, but you were too much in rush and you went to hospital. Next day in TV news you see such and such a person died at such and such a junction, she fell down. How would you feel at that time? I wish I could have done that when I had the time and opportunity. So life goes on like this, from one missed opportunity to another missed opportunity. That means we are not flexible enough with our consciousness. What happens, let us see, in a house where husband and wife are fighting, father and mother fighting, and suddenly in that bedroom, your little daughter of 5 years of age comes and gets shocked seeing you argue. Are you both at the same time to freeze and start smiling? If you can do it very fast, that means your consciousness is very flexible. If not, and you continue on your trajectory, that means your consciousness has become stone-like. Same thing you call someone in your office, your secretary, and you start fighting. And suddenly another employee comes and you keep fighting and keep shouting. What happens there? So I'm citing this as an example of not just having a broad level of consciousness, but being able to move from one consciousness level to another level of consciousness. And this happens when we meditate regularly, because now you are trying to hold on to a certain level of consciousness, which is so refined. You're trying to capture the air in your hand all the time. This is even greater than that. If you can do that, then what is this? It's nothing. Office affairs are nothing in compared to holding these levels of consciousness. That's why this need to hold on to subtle states of spirituality after each meditation. Otherwise, you have earned a check and you blow it away in wrong things. How will you accumulate your wealth? Every month you have a check and you blow it away. When will you ever buy a house? Day after day you meditate, you feel good, but you're not able to retain the spiritual state and magnify it. We lose it. We better not to meditate. But I would not recommend that. Don't give up so easily. Start the meditation earliest possible. Someone says we'll meditate when we are retired. Will it really work? I really don't think so. When you are 60 plus, you can't even play with your grandchildren, can't even lift them. You can't even sit properly. You can't even bend your legs properly. How will you meditate? And there are inner states which are so challenging, which are not fit for an old man or a woman. In the passing, I will make this remark, which is, as you move out from one of those chakras, number 11th, from Muladhara, that 11th chakra had such a capacity, because behind this 11th chakra, there are two more chakras, minor or sub-points. One is called Saraswati point, point of knowledge, which is exactly here, where you see my hair receding, which is the 11th point from Muladhara. Just about a centimeter and a half, there is upward, Saraswati point. And below, very close to it, almost superimposed, is a point of passion. So when we are passing through this 11th chakra, let us see when you are at the age of 70 and you are passing through this 11th chakra, suddenly you feel worse than a teenager, because now your passion point is also awakened. You will feel so horrible, my God, not at this age of 70. So it is better to start off early and finish off early. If at a younger age you feel passionate, it is justifiable. You won't feel bad about it. When all the fires are put off and suddenly fire begins, what will you think? You'll feel horrible about yourself. And this will not let you progress further. I'm telling you from my personal experiences, which I had gone through many, many years before. And I have received many letters from people of 75, people of 80. Kamlesh Bhai tell me, what is wrong with me? But when you study their spiritual states and where they are at the moment reigning, I said, please don't worry, you're growing, but right now you're on a wrong juncture. Once you cross this point, there will be a better state emerging very fast. So our consciousness change constantly as we move from one chakra to another chakra, and not only that chakra influences us, but there is surrounding this chakra also there are many points. For example, this point that I'm referring to you, tremendous knowledge surge happens. At the same time, passion increases so much that you feel so little. My God, what have I become? But if that can make you humble, it will be better. That, my Lord, I submit even this to you. Then you're adding or making use of the adverse or strenuous circumstances to your advantage. It helps us surrender. If you don't, and if you fight, then you will not cross this point, particular chakra. So we were talking about ego. What becomes of ego? From arrogance, where will we go? To humility, to divine consciousness. How to give the example of divine consciousness? It's very difficult for me until you yourself become one. Divine consciousness means you are trying as a drop to talk about the ocean when you have merged. You understand? When the drop has fallen into the ocean, it has become the ocean. Drop is not there to talk about how I feel now. So, I'm sorry, I cannot express this, what happens in that state of divine consciousness. But it's a matter of experience. Even Vedas, Upanishads, they don't talk about the final state. What do they say instead? Neti, neti, neti. They very simply, what does this neti, neti mean? Not this, not this, not this. Why are they saying not this, not this, not this? Because that cannot be compared with anything which is here. So, not this, not this, not this. It's very difficult, impossible rather, to describe the final state. That doesn't mean that we cannot all experience it. We all can experience that state very easily. You have the hunger for it, you have the interest for it, it can happen. With the help of this pranahuti, I say very confidently what you saw in children. It's extraordinary. If you had delved deeper into their personal lives and say, what were you before this was trained, this technique was given to you? Through this training, something magical happens. Their confidence level shoots up so high. You heard about fast reading, etc., right? Similarly, they are able to, on a accelerated pace of learning starts in them. They can take a book, even before they finish the chapter, they can start arguing with teachers, but they are calm. They know everything. I have seen some children, they just, like Swami Vivekananda, put a book between their hands and describe the whole book. So to me, Brighter Mind program, which you call as, it's a disruption in the field of education, which is for good. Don't we appreciate disruptive technologies? We love them. If you had one, you'll promote it and become billionaire. But we will not do that. We'll make sure children can learn this and remain on an accelerated pace of learning. Similarly, heartfulness way to me, to my heart, is a disruption in the field of yoga. Rishis and seers and saints, they meditated for decades and still yearning to feel the final state of samadhi. Didn't happen. Some were lucky, very few. Tell me even one book where they describe systematically how you meditate. Have you read Swami Vivekananda's volumes? Not even one place there is a mention of how to meditate. Though he creates so much of hunger through his sharing that I feel like that, I must meditate, I would like to meditate, I'd like to achieve samadhi, I'd like to one day meditate on the cliff of a mountain, go in samadhi and just go into abyss and die. That was his dream. But he doesn't mention how to do it. Same thing, Ramakrishna Paramahansa. My life, spiritual life began when I first read Gospel. Every page used to make me cry. It used to raise goosebumps all over my body. And I used to pray, I wish I had a guru like Swami Vivekananda or Ramakrishna Paramahansa. I will submit my life once and for all. And fortunately, I did find in the form of Ramchandraji. His mastery over transmission is unparalleled in the history of yoga. With the twinkle of an eye, he can create a state of samadhi in any person. Yesterday, we had first exposure to meditation done with the help of pranahuti. Today also, I will attempt to do the same thing. See how our consciousness can shift just by meditating with the help of this pranahuti. Without this pranahuti, heartfulness is as bad or as good as any other system. It will become preacher. Guru do not have to be a preacher. Guru must hold your hand and walk with your consciousness. He will use his consciousness, penetrate in your consciousness and allow you to dive deeper. I mean, who can do this? One who is willing to walk with his consciousness and start this inner journey and helps us move from one level to the another. From one level of consciousness to immediately, instantly put us in a superconscious state. And at times, there are methods which we use every day. It helps us plunge in a deep subconscious state. At night time, there is also a technique which we use instantly, bringing forward the Yoga Nidra state, which remains all throughout the sleep. It's again a matter of experience. So, those who are willing and bold and courageous, I welcome them all to try this one out and see how at every moment the shift in consciousness helps us also change and help us manage our own individual life. And when I am in harmony within myself, I can remain harmonious with my surrounding. And finally, I would like to share just one simple thought. It's very logical and very subtly argumentative. Who doesn't like happiness? We all like happiness. Can you be happy when you're fighting and restless with others or in the office and there is such a bad environment? You can't be. So happiness multiplies in harmonious state, in harmonious relations, harmonious environment. And how can you have harmony without contemplative mind? You can have contemplative mind when you are focused. And who can have focused mind? One whose mind or thoughts are regulated. And how can you regulate your thoughts and mind? It's only through meditation. I also wanted to touch, but I don't think, do we have time, Professor Saab? No time, okay. So, I wanted to touch one aspect. I keep saying Patanjali's 24 elements, I call them as modifiers. One that deviates our consciousness and restricts its uses. There are 24 of them. Without understanding these 24 deviations of mind, modern psychiatry will be incomplete. You can quickly browse through this, that all this affects consciousness. This is also there in this year's Heartfulness magazine. Since it's 24 in numbers, I have tried to take 2-3 at a time in each magazine. Importance of all this and how it plays out with our consciousness. So we started this series of how it affects our consciousness. We are now in the month of July, August, September. Now a few more are left. But I would highly recommend you to collect this edition at the end of the year, which broadly describes how our consciousness becomes so restrictive because of these 24 elements. I have already shared with you how consciousness can be expanded through meditation and how meditation affects Chit, Manas, Buddhi and Ahankar. There are so many elements to this practice. I wanted to also share with you how to curb or detox passion or sensual tendencies, but we don't have time. But you can always call one of our trainers and be benefited with their company. I think someone will guide you through how to use this as a practice. Is it possible? Sir, 5 minutes? Elizabeth, do you want to share how to proceed with the practice, how to become, or rather initiated to this? Please come.
As Daaji mentioned, there are a number of different practices in heartfulness. The 4 core practices that we start with when we're initiated are relaxation, which is a simple practice for relaxing the physical body and helps prepare us for meditation. The second practice is meditation, which Daaji spoke about and we experienced last night, where we meditate on the presence of divinity, the presence of the divine light that's already present within our hearts and that is drawing us inwards. It's a silent meditation. Although our minds do a lot of wandering, eventually over time they learn to be regulated. They learn to sit in stillness. And as a result, we go from thinking to a deeper feeling level of existence, beyond the experiences of feeling, into a state of becoming and eventually to non-being. And that's done in the morning when we first wake up, preferably before dawn, for a very scientific reason, because the world is very still, and still we're able to absorb energy in, We're able to absorb within more easily at this time. Once the sun comes up and the photons start dancing, everything starts to be more outward. It's less easy to meditate. Although if you can't meditate first thing in the morning, you can easily try it any time during the day, according to your schedule. There's no rigidity, very little do's and don'ts in this system. It's all about your own willingness, your own interest to want to evolve, to want to elevate your consciousness. The third practice that we do in the evening after the day's work, preferably around sunset, but again, not everybody's schedule allows, so whenever it suits you, is a process of cleaning, of mental detoxification, mental decluttering, where again we sit comfortably in the same position as meditation. But instead of meditating, we actively use the mind to remove all the complexities and impurities that we've taken on during the day into our system. They could be emotional complexities, intellectual, visual, all sorts of things that we accumulate through the senses and through our own reactions to what happens during the day. It's like the equivalent of taking a bath for your body to clean your mind. Because without that, if we're accumulating clutter day after day after day, you can imagine how heavy the mind becomes. So we clean by sitting and having a very gentle, light, profound suggestion or sankalpa that all the complexities and impurities of the day are going out the back from the top of the head to the tailbone in the form of smoke or vapor. Very simple. And as a result, many thoughts will surface, many feelings may surface, but we ignore them. We let them pass like clouds in the sky, removing them from our system. And then the final one of the 4 core practices is prayer, the way we connect with our inner self before bedtime, and again first thing in the morning. Very, very potent, very evolutionary, prayerful state that we create, where we go into the heart. And as Daaji was speaking about ego, if any of you want a simple technique to help you manage your ego, prayer is it. It completely nullifies the ego when you're in the heart. And it's a prayer that was dictated from above. It was given to us by Babaji Ramchandra. And is a simple series of positive affirmations or statements of fact. We're not begging anything from God. We're not demanding anything. We're simply stating what is important to us in our spiritual progress. I'll say it very quickly. You may not understand it. It's not necessary to understand it with the intellect or the mind. It won't make sense to you, especially in the beginning. It's a process of understanding through going deep into the meaning of the words in the heart, where the words resonate and make sense on a deeper intuitive level. So the prayer goes like this. O Master, meaning the Master within. O Master, Thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God and power to bring us up to that stage. When you say this within just before sleep, you sleep in a very connected, very deep, very spiritual state, so that when you wake in the morning, you're refreshed, ready to meditate, ready to go out into the day, without carrying over the complications of the day before. So if you take the daily cycle, it's very simple. You wake in the morning, you pray again and meditate. You go out into the day. You may accumulate all sorts of things, all sorts of complexities through your daily activities. You try and hold the meditative state, but it doesn't always work. We're still practicing. We're still a work in progress. So by the end of the day, you clean. You remove all these complexities. You deal with your family, you play with your children, whatever, and at bedtime, again you connect. You go into the deepest core of yourself so that you're connected with your soul throughout sleep. Wake again into the next day. It doesn't take much time out of your day, but the effect is totally transformative. It will change your life within no time, within a few weeks possibly. So it's worth trying, and it's worth being regular and disciplined in an approach like anything. If you're a physical athlete, if you're doing physical gym, you have discipline. If you want to be a mental athlete, do this mental gym. You also need some discipline. But it's not hard because the practice is self-perpetuating. The more you do it, the more change you see, the more you want to do it. Thank you.
Time is ticking. But those who like to leave can leave now, because next thing what I'm going to do is meditate for at least 15-20 minutes. Okay. Here we'll use this, our hallmark of heartfulness meditation, transmission, pranahuti. I'll be transmitting, and hopefully this will give you an experience. Now we'll meditate. Before that, we'll try to relax our body and mind through a process which a lot of you may be familiar with. But while this is happening, a special work is also done so that this relaxation happens fast. It's also a yogic prakriya, where a lot of vestibules are emptied during this relaxation as I make the commands. So, once this relaxation process is over, we'll focus our mind on the presence of divinity in our heart, thinking that it is pulling my attention inward. During that time, I'll be transmitting this pranahuti. Please be receptive. If thoughts do arise, nothing wrong with it. Just gently remind yourself that, oh, now I'm meditating on the godly presence in my heart. This will go on for about 10-15 minutes. That's my idea, but if it goes on a bit longer, please forgive me. Okay. So all are seated now. Gently close your eyes. Be receptive towards the energy entering through your feet, coming from Mother Earth. Wiggle your toes if you have to. Allow your feet and ankle to relax with this energy. Allow this energy to move upward, relaxing your lower legs and calf muscles and knees. Pay attention to your thighs and hips. Allow the energy to move there and help them relax. Let this energy move upward, entire back. Feel the relaxation there. Now let it move forward into your abdominal muscles and chest area, your stomach area and chest area. Pay attention to your shoulders. Feel lighter there. Feel them almost melting away. Let this energy descend into your arms, your biceps, elbow and lower arms, your palms and fingers. Now let's pay attention to our neck muscles. Drop your jaw and your tongue in your mouth. Let them relax. Now all your facial muscles, feel them relaxing. Your lips, your eyebrows, eyelids, earlobes. Your forehead and top of your head. Now scan the whole system, top to toe. Okay. Now we are ready to meditate, thinking of presence of divine light in the heart, which is pulling our attention inward. We'll continue like this for 10-15 minutes. So let's meditate. I have often used meditation as a problem solver, getting answers, solutions related to business world, personal relationships, etc., stressful situations, critical decisions. Before meditation, just put these questions to your mind and just meditate. But don't think of the problems. Start with questions in your mind, drop the question, focus on divine light, and try to get absorbed there. Something will happen within, you'll have one answer. It will guide you from inside, or when you open your eyes at the end of it, you'll feel, yes, now I should do this and I must avoid that. 9 out of 10 times this will happen. If it doesn't happen, meditate again next day. And if you like to be so sure about the decision, meditate few times and see if this answer is repeating. Then you can confidently move on, see.